Hey everyone, I'm here to talk about 4G2, which is classifying figures based on their lines and angles. The first word we need to know for this is quadrilateral. A quadrilateral is a shape that has four lines. That's easy to remember because the word quad is at the front of it, and quad means four. Lateral actually means line, so four lines. Another important vocabulary word is congruent. Congruent means the same, and I will show you how we're going to use that word. First thing we're going to do is talk about a square. So we are going to talk about the lines and angles in a square. You can see that it has four congruent sides, which means the sides are the same length all the way around. So that's where you would use the word congruent, four lines that are the same. It also has two sets of parallel lines. The sides are parallel and the top is parallel to the bottom. So that's one pair and then that's two pairs. It has four right angles in each of the corners. The next shape we're going to look at is a rectangle, which is very similar to the square, but instead of saying it has four congruent sides, we're going to say it has two pairs of congruent lines. The top is congruent to the bottom and the sides are congruent to each other. It also has two sets of parallel lines, just like the square did, the top and the bottom and the two sides. And it also has the four right angles. The next shape here is called a rhombus, and a rhombus is basically a square that's been kind of tilted onto its side. So it still has the four congruent sides, and it has two sets of parallel lines. The top is parallel to the bottom, and the sides are both parallel. It has two acute angles in the top and the bottom here, and two obtuse angles, which are these two bigger angles. The next thing that we have is a parallelogram, and basically a parallelogram is a rectangle kind of tipped onto its side. It has two pairs of congruent sides and also two sets of parallel lines, and it has two acute and two obtuse. The next one is where they like to get a little tricky. This is a trapezoid, and there's two ways to show a trapezoid. This one is the more traditional way, and it has one pair of parallel lines. The top is parallel to the bottom. It has two acute angles down here in the corners and two obtuse angles up here in the two tops. It also can be drawn like this. This is also a way to show a trapezoid, and this is the one they like to show to try to trick you. It would also have one pair of parallel lines on the top and the bottom, but it may have a right angle. So it may have two right angles, one here in the top and one in the bottom. It would have one acute angle, and it would also have one obtuse angle. So for trapezoid, this is the one they like to try to get you on. Okay, now we're going to continue on to the second part of this standard, which is talking about triangles. And you know already that a triangle is a three-sided shape. There are, however, several different types of triangles. The first one here is called a scalene triangle. A scalene triangle has no congruent sides. That means all the sides are different lengths. And because it can have all different side lengths, it also can have different types of angles. So you would just have to look really closely. Okay, a scalene. I like to think of that like scales on a fish and how no fish in the sea are exactly alike. So that helps me kind of remember that scalene has no congruent sides. The next one is called an isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle has two congruent sides. You can see both on the top and the bottom of this particular one. Because they can vary in length, you have to pay attention to the angles. A way to remember isosceles that has two is when you see the word isosceles, you think of eyes, and eyes, you have two eyes, so that helps you remember that two sides are the same. The next one is an equilateral triangle. That's the one we all learned in kindergarten, and that's the one that all the sides are congruent. So they're all the same. When you think of a triangle, it's usually what probably pops in your head. And it has three acute angles. Of course, they can be, small and large, but they all have the same sides. The last one that we're talking about is a right triangle, and a right triangle is really named after the fact that it has a right angle in the corner. The lengths of the sides can be different. It really doesn't matter, but if it has one right angle in it, you go ahead and you call it a right triangle. Okay.